Who are some of the worst Tinder swindlers out there taking advantage of people with lonely hearts? Let's get started with number 5. His name was Gabriel. A woman named Kate was scammed out of thousands of dollars by a man she'd met on a dating site. The man's name was Gabriel, and Kate never believed that he could scam her. Kate and Gabriel built an excellent rapport. They flirted a lot, but also discussed the mundane nitty-gritty of their days. Kate was cautious of this newfound romance, so she made sure she vetted him extensively. She knew that scammers gonna scam. Kate tried a reverse search of his photos on Facebook and found an old Facebook account of him. She also made sure she received a lot of selfies from him. Kate did her due diligence. In the end, she discovered that the Facebook account was a hacked one, and Gabriel walked away with $11,000. Gabriel eventually made his play when he told Kate he needed to rush to London to see his daughter. She was to go through surgery, and Gabriel wanted to be with her. When he arrived in London, he told Kate that he'd moved so quickly that his bank had blocked his withdrawals and needed a little money help. He then told Kate that he wanted to bring his kids to spend Christmas back home with her. However, he still had issues with his bank and he needed her to lend him some money. Since his bank wasn't working, he got Kate to buy some crypto and send it to him. Kate sent him about $5,000 in crypto and fully expected Gabriel to pay it back. On the day Gabriel and his daughters were to arrive, Kate went to wait at the airport for them. After 45 minutes of waiting, Kate's heart sank down through her stomach, while her stomach was sinking through the floor of her car. Not literally, though, because that would be a whole different story. When Gabriel finally contacted her, he said customs had detained him because of an antique piece of jewelry he'd bought, and he needed $5,000 to clear it. At this point, she thought she was being scammed, but she still sent $1,750 to an account Gabriel said was owned by a custom agent. The transfer was picked up by her bank, and she was informed that the account was linked to fraud. After jumping through many hoops, Kate was luckily able to get her money back. Now, she shares her story with others in the hopes that it will help them avoid getting scammed. Number 4. Locked and loaded. Marcel Andre Vautour scammed Andrea Sepwranza and 2 other women after promising them love and affection. After completing his scam, Vautour vanished. When Andrea started doing some digging on Vautour and the nature of his crimes, she discovered that he hadn't scammed her randomly. She was targeted. Marcel Vautour sought out busy career women aged 45 to 50, got them to fall in love, and then he'd rip them off. When Andrea first met her scammer, he told her his name was Marc Ibert. For long, Marc Ibert was feeding Andrea sob stories about his difficult childhood and how his parents suffered from addiction. He went on to tell her that he worked on an oil rig and had purchased thousands of acres in Nova Scotia to build a youth at-risk facility. Andrea ate up Vautour's tales, oblivious to her own risk. Once Vautour had been captured, Andrea believes that he specifically targeted her. He'd asked Andrea leading questions to learn more about her and had built a personality he knew she would fall for, which she did, hard. That was when Vautour planned his exit strategy. He first tried to get Andrea to invest in his fake facility for youth at risk since he knew she'd love the cause, but she instead offered to help him apply for grants. Realizing that his youth at risk gimmick wouldn't work, the fraudster kicked things into second gear. Vautour claimed he suffered from Crohn's disease and later told Andrea that he'd been hospitalized. He claimed that his wallet had been stolen and he needed cash to buy expensive medication. That was just the beginning of his demands. Afterward, Vautour told Andrea that he needed to go get his dog from his ex and needed cash for a hotel room and train ticket from her. In total, Andrea gave him almost $5,000 and he promised to pay her back. Once Vautour got his money, he ghosted Andrea and never looked back. Andrea wasn't the only person that Vautour had played the game with. After Andrea realized that she'd been had, she called the police and then met Jean-Baptiste Jokin, a man who'd paid thousands of dollars to Vautour for training courses that never came. By the time Jokin realized that he'd been scammed, Vautour had fleeced him out of about $30,000. Surprisingly, Jokin wasn't the only other victim. Through social media, Andrea was able to find even more alleged victims. Despite knowing of Vautour's crimes, the police were unable unable to find him. So Andrea decided she would take matters into her own hands. She built a website, stopthemarchmadness.com, to help victims of romance fraud connect and start to build an entire community united against fraudsters like Vautour. She soon discovered many other women had been scammed by Vautour. Victims like Andrea went on to hire private investigators and track down multiple phone numbers and email addresses connected to Vautour. In the end, Vautour was arrested at a hotel in Toronto because of a police tip-off and made no attempts to struggle with the officers. He's now been charged with fraud, and his next relationship will be with some handcuffs. Number 3. Swindler Recipe. Patrick Giblin scammed hundreds of women with false promises of love through online dating sites. Giblin wooed these women with stories about his respectable family and got them to send him thousands of dollars. By the time Giblin was caught, he'd scammed his victims out of thousands of dollars. Giblin wasn't just your average lover boy scammer. He was an extraordinarily prolific one and had scammed over 100 women using the same potent mixture of lies, promises of love, and fraud. The only way Giblin maintained his prolific record with his schemes was to target specific women. Giblin targeted vulnerable women who had just recently ended a long-term relationship or suffered the death of a loved one. His mother must be proud. Once Giblin found women that fit his profile, he went on to provide a shoulder to lean on. Then he gained their trust and used that trust to scam them. One particular thing about Giblin is his dedication to his craft of fraud. Even after getting caught and serving prison time, he still found himself perpetuating the same scam over and over again. Even while he was in prison, he went online and still scammed women with the same awful lies. Even after serving prison time, Giblin got himself arrested again, but escaped custody like the slimy little goblin he is. Giblin became a fugitive thereafter, but even that didn't stop him from continuing his scam. Giblin was so meticulous with his scams that he kept detailed notes on every potential victim. These notes included their names, what they did for work, their hobbies, and what sort of man they were looking for. Giblin had to make sure he never got his victims mixed up. Giblin's scamming operation is so extensive that the authorities say they've never seen so many romance scams connected to one scammer. At his hearing, Giblin admitted that he'd stolen up to $200,000 from women over the years. That number is likely higher, as police have evidence that Giblin has been in the scamming business since at least 2000. Giblin was first caught by the police in 2005 after investigations revealed that he'd scammed an Ohio woman. While in the system, Giblin admitted to the police that he'd scammed over 80 women in 5 years. That's 16 women in a year. Giblin pleaded guilty to his crimes, and the court slammed him with a 9-year sentence. After serving 5 years, Giblin was placed in a residential re-entry program in Philadelphia. At the program, he was given a 1-day pass to get a job in Atlantic City. Giblin left in the morning and did not return. But he couldn't run forever. A few weeks later, Giblin was caught in an Atlantic City hotel. The authorities searched his room and found a cell phone, money transfer receipts, and the notebook he used to keep his lies straight with his victims. Giblin was charged to court again, and this time he pleaded guilty to escape charges. He was sentenced to a further 18 months in prison for good measure. In 2013, Giblin was released again on probation. He was supposed to inform his probation officer about plans to leave the city if he wanted to. But Giblin wasn't the kind of parolee who cared about such silly rules that could get in the way of his scamming. So he fled again. While on the run, Giblin focused on carrying out more scams and was able to get 10 more victims. Giblin, of course, was caught again, and this time was sentenced to 5 years in prison. While in prison, Giblin didn't give up on his dream to become the most prolific scammer ever. He continued to grind on dating sites and scammed multiple women. In 2020, after serving 3 years of his sentence, Giblin was approved to be transferred to a residential re-entry system in Newark. Federal officials say they saw Giblin getting on the plane to Newark, but Giblin never emerged in the city. He'd found a way to escape again. In 2021, police caught up to Giblin once again. He was arrested in Atlantic City and charged with escaping from prison and fraud. Again, he was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison. Again. Giblin doesn't seem affected by this ruling at all. He said he believed that the trial was fair and that it could even help him kick his gambling addiction. Or maybe he was just saying that to the public and is already planning his next jailbreak. Maybe his real addiction is getting apprehended by the police after escaping custody after getting arrested for scamming vulnerable women. Maybe just escaping custody doesn't scratch the itch. We don't judge. Number 2. Catalina's fake gold. Catalina Rosa met Eric Benson at a trendy restaurant in Florida. Eric convinced Rosa that he was an art dealer and a stock and commodities trader for wealthy clients. He spoke quite charmingly to Catalina, and she became captivated by him. In no time, Catalina grew quite close to Eric. He invited her over to his apartment at an exclusive resort and often arranged their meetings in stylish and exclusive locations. One day, he invited her over to an amazing Spanish-style mansion and showed off a brand new Ferrari that he just bought. Eric was quite fond of gold and said it was his favorite type of investment. After 8 months, he gave Catalina some gold coins to sell for him and offered a 20% commission for her troubles. Catalina did this twice for him. Then, when Brexit happened, he convinced her to cash in half of her IRA and invest it in gold. Eric told her the financial markets were about to be uncertain and that Catalina wouldn't be able to withdraw from her accounts when that happened. So she did as he asked and withdrew $35,000 cash from her savings and gave it to him. In return, he gave her 27 gold coins that could, in theory, be exchanged for its cash equivalent at any time. Her son also withdrew $12,000 from his savings account and gave Eric for the same purpose. He received 10 gold coins in return. 11 months later, Catalina became worried about her finances and spoke to her banker. The banker became concerned over her story and recommended she quickly get the gold coins authenticated. And wouldn't you know it, the coins were fake. Catalina went to the police to get help, but there wasn't much they could do. If the police couldn't do anything, then Catalina decided she would have to catch Eric herself. She met up with him on the pretense that she wanted to buy gold for her daughter. She recorded the meeting and then got into contact with the Secret Service. The Secret Service took her case very seriously and quickly began investigating Eric. Catalina contacted the owner of the beautiful Spanish-style house Eric had arranged their meeting in and met Eric's other girlfriend, Jennifer. She told Jennifer about Eric's scam, and Jennifer immediately flipped. Once she confronted Eric, once again, he disappeared. After Catalina met Jennifer, the spurned women bonded over their mutual boyfriend and decided to do some digging on Eric. They discovered that his real name was Blaine Frederick. He was a big-time con artist, which isn't exactly a hot newsflash, and that he was a wanted man. After 9 months of being on the run, Eric was finally arrested at a golf club in Jupiter, Florida. A bartender recognized him from a flyer that the police had dropped months earlier and notified the police. Eric tried to escape on foot, but he wasn't as good a runner as he was a scammer. He was caught pretty quickly. Once he was caught, Eric claimed that he was penniless. All of Catalina's money had disappeared into thin air. She's unlikely to ever get her money back, but Catalina comforted herself with the fact that Eric would be spending a long time behind bars. Number 1. The Handbag Sugar Baby. Cyriluk Fatima Chimeli ran a love scam and duped a Sydney man out of about $400,000. Chimeli scammed the man through a series of fake invoices and intimate text messages that painted a picture of a false reality for her victim. Chimeli used the money she got from her victims to fund her luxury lifestyle filled with luxury handbags. But this wasn't Chimeli's first fraudulent foray. She had a pattern of going after rich men on dating apps and spinning a web of lies for them to fall into. Chimeli had met the Sydney man she scammed on an internet dating service that specializes in a sugar daddy type relationship. The service showed that the man made up to $250,000 a year and had a net worth of about $10 million. He had more than enough money to spend, so Chimeli decided to help him do just that with a robust portion of lies. First, Chimeli lied about her occupation and claimed that she worked as a cleaner and wanted to become a lawyer. She later convinced him that she was also a trader in high-end luxury bags, and she sent him an invoice for a bag worth over $300,000. The invoice had been forged, as the barcode on it carried the map of the world, which is weird that she would just leave it there. Once her victim saw the invoice, alarm bells started ringing, and he realized that he might have been scammed. In court, he testified that he'd hoped to marry Fatima, and her fraud hadn't only jeopardized his financial future, but his romantic one as well. To show how serious about marriage he was, he'd sent her $13,000 to get an engagement ring. Fatima would never purchase the ring. Fatima wasn't just a one-off fraudster. She was a prolific one, as police discovered that she'd scammed another victim in the same manner. She'd used this victim's name to open a loan for a business idea and had then defrauded him of about $27,000 into a service she called Pick Me. The service was supposed to be an Uber-style delivery service, but for parcels. The long arm of the law finally grabbed Chimeli as she was arrested and charged. In court, she claimed that her actions were caused by her anxiety and depression, which were caused by a miscarriage and the death of her father. She also said that she'd been forced to support her 3 kids financially because of the awful condition she'd found herself in. Unfortunately for her, the judge wasn't someone who could could be scammed by her tales. Just to throw a little shade her way, he even called the scam unsophisticated, which probably made her weirdly self-conscious. Should she have tried to be more sophisticated? Chimley was convicted of fraud and sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you would rather have happen if these were your only 2 choices. Have an arranged marriage with your partner picked by your parents or picked by artificial intelligence.